Hello there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Myro and welcome back to the 90s. Yes, we're carrying on with the series and today it's time to talk about my favorite top 10 albums of 1993. Another banger of a year, bunch of great records, songs, you name it, and especially metal albums from 1993 were amazing. It was really hard for me to make this list once again. And I think it's gonna be even harder for 1994, another banger of a year, but we'll talk about that next week. At number 10, I have PJ Harvey and her second studio album, Riddle Me. Another year, another appearance from PJ Harvey. I already talked about her debut record when I talked about my top 10 favorite albums from 1992. And here we are in 1993, and another record from PJ made appearance on my list, and it won't be the last. I do really love PJ Harvey, especially her 90s stuff. This album is another heavy record, and this is the last album to feature PJ Harvey trio band uh, before she completely embarked solo on her next studio album. This album was produced by Steve Albini, and that's definitely apparent from the get-go. This album is intense, it is noisy, it is raw, it is angry, it is basically dry, but with a more evolved sound, even though it sounds uh, even more raw than her debut record. But that's the magic of Steve Albini's production, and this is why I love it. And it it was somewhat controversial at the time when this album was released. Critics were divided on whether this production suits PJ Harvey's voice, but to tell you the truth, I think it suits her perfectly. The performances are incredible. PJ Harvey sounds amazing. At times, she sounds frantic, even, and that quite loud dynamic here is executed to perfection here. Bunch of great tracks, like the title track, Man Size, 50-Foot Queenie, and in all, it is really a provocative album with high energy and great sound overall. It's a great and influential record of the 90s, and hence it is on my number 10 spot. As I mentioned at the start of the video, this year was exceptionally good for heavy metal music, bunch of great records, and there are a couple of records that made my list as well, starting with my number 9, which is Carcass and their record Heartwork. Heartwork is fourth studio album by English death metal band Carcass. Iconic cover artwork by H.R. Geiger and an iconic album in melodic death metal. The production is great, the guitar tone is perfect, and the playing is over the top. It's visceral, it is heavy, and at points even catchy, which is something usually not associated with death metal music. But this is kind of a melodic death metal, which is a bit different. This is the last album to feature Michael Emmett, who will just a couple of years later form another band called Arch Enemy. He's a great guitar player, and his guitar work on this album is amazing. Heartwork is in your face kind of an album with outstanding solos and riffing. Vocals are dirty and unapologetic. It sounds great. To me, it stood the test of time. It is a fantastic record, and it was really influential for development of death metal music in the 90s and today as well, because some of the bands took big influence from Carcass and especially this album. At number 8, I have another death metal record with Death, Individual Thought Patterns, another Death album, and another lineup change for the band. This time around, we have on guitars Andy LaRocque of King Diamond's fame and Gene Hoglan on drums, and this is the last album to feature Steve DiGiorgio on bass. An all-star lineup, and what I love about this record more than human is the production. I really love how the bass sounds here, how it's mixed. It really elevates all of these songs even further. The musicianship here is amazing. It is precise. the guitar work by Andy and drum work by Gene is really felt on all of these songs. Chuck sounds even better. The album feels jazzier and proggier than previous record, still retaining the technical elements of Human, but with an added melodic touch as well. Uh, the Philosopher, the closing track, is my favorite song of the record and my introduction to the band. That song received significant airplay on MTV, for example, which was not something common for uh, metal bands, especially death metal bands. So, yeah, that was definitely something. And this album is one of my favorite death metal records in general. At number seven, I have another metal band. Well, they're not death metal. Well, they kind of are, but they're more than that. I'm talking about Cynic and their debut record Focus. They're, you could say, avant-garde metal band, American metal band, featuring none other than Sean Reinhardt and Paul Masvidal, who both played on That's Human record. The experience and the work they've done with Chuck Schuldiner was kind of essential in recording of this record. The album combines the elements of death metal music, progressive metal, and influence, and bunch of other influence like jazz, which was done maybe only by atheists at that point. And yes, the mix is maybe rough, but the playing here is great. To me, Focus is one of the most interesting and unique sounding death metal albums ever. And yeah, here I am once again saying death metal, but it's so much more than that. Yes, it contains the element of death metal music, but it draws inspiration from different genres, different styles, different sounds, and all of that combined really makes a unique listening experience. And yes, this album may not be for everyone, especially if you don't like the use of vocoder. But like I said, it blends so many different things and manages to create this unique sound that stood the test of time. It sounds spiritual and philosophical, not just in lyrics, but the music itself sounds like that. It may sound cliche, but it really brings you to a whole new plane of existence listening to this record. At least that's the experience I got when I first heard Focus by Cynic. So, yeah, fantastic debut, fantastic record, and even though it sounds a bit rough, the mixing, I mean, it's still a fantastic record, and yeah, it's my number seven. At number six, I have Slow Dive with their album Souvlaki. This is another groundbreaking album from 1993, but now finally we're moving from death metal to dream pop and shoegaze, and this is the second studio album by Slow Dive, Souvlaki. This is just a gorgeous record from start to finish. It is lush, it is dreamy, and it has that nostalgic sound and nostalgic feel that I get listening to this record. And as soon as Allison kicks in, you're really in for a dreamy ride. And this is a more of a dream pop album than it's a shoegaze record. It's not as noisy and chaotic as Loveless is. It's mellow, dreamy, and atmospheric. The guitars obviously are essential here. So are the dreamy vocals that combine make that lush atmosphere that this album has. I think this album perfectly blends the sound of dream pop and shoegaze. It is unique and definitely a must-listen album if you're into this kind of music. And it is influential record and beloved record for a reason. So yeah, I have this one at number six. At number five, I have another metal band, and yeah, I told you already, it's gonna be heavy on the metal in 1993, and I have Paradise Lost and their record Icon, British doom gothic metal band. It is their fourth studio album that marks a departure from their early work, which was more in a line of death doom metal sound. But Icon marks the beginning of their gothic metal phase, and the pioneers basically of that particular sound alongside My Dying Bride and Anathema in the UK and Typo Negative in the US. Even though they changed the sound, Paradise Lost maintained some of the elements of their previous records. We still have that dark, gothic atmosphere and heaviness, but what changed the most are Nick Holmes' vocals that are similar to kind of James Hetfield's Black Album vocal style, and paired with great melodic guitar work from Gregor McIntosh, who was and still is the main songwriter in the band, really makes that unique sound that they managed to create on this record and even on previous records as well, but especially on this and the follow-up to Icon. There are some classic songs here like Ember's Fire, Remembrance, Widow, and True Belief. This album is consistent record from start to finish, full of catchy moments, it's full of melodic hooks, and I'm not sure how many of you even heard of Paradise Lost, but if you're into this kind of music, if you like gothic rock, metal, and that kind of sound, this album is perfect for you. At number four, moving on from metal to hip hop. And I cannot talk about 1993 without mentioning one of the best hip hop records of all time, Wu-Tang Clan and their record Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers. And I'm gonna be honest with you, when I was a kid and a teenager, I wasn't into hip hop that much, but over the years, especially in the last 10 years or so, I got into hip hop, and one of the first records, big records that I thought that I need to hear was this one. And I was blown away. Amazing record, and it is another groundbreaking record on this list. There's something really special about 90s hip hop, and I prefer it over modern hip hop in general. I like the sound, I like the beats, I like the production. One of the greatest and most influential hip hop releases of all time. 9 members, and yeah, I guess the strength is in numbers because each MC brought something new, something different. The album is full of personality and great delivery by everyone, great beats, great flow, and fantastic, fantastic production by RZA. Great use of off-key piano samples and movie samples as well. It is a memorable performance by all MCs, and that makes this enjoyable listen from front to back. I mean, this album is full of bangers. Obviously, some MCs are better in delivery, some MCs have better lyrics or better beats, but everyone, and that's what I like about this record. It is so diverse with sound, with lyrical themes, and really interesting listening experience from start to finish. I One of the best hip hop albums of all time. I mean, it is a banger, classic, 10 out of 10 record for me, perfect. So yeah, number four, Wu-Tang Clan, Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers. At number three, I have another Steve Albini record that sounds amazing, and my favorite record by the band, and that is Nirvana in Utero. This album is like back to kind of similar sound of Bleach, but still retaining some elements of from Nevermind. It's an abrasive and raw sounding record, Steve Albini signature sound. Compared to commercial appeal of Nevermind, this album is a different beast. To me, the lyrics are better and more interesting. And the most interesting thing, even though Kurt wanted to make an angrier, more abrasive record, he still wrote some great memorable melodies. I mean, just listen to All Apologies, Dumb, or my favorite Nirvana song, Heart Shaped Box. Yes, it may be a challenging listen to some, but it is a rewarding listening experience. The performances are once again fantastic, especially Dave Grohl on drums, as always. Uh, like I said, the album is messy, it is raw, loud, but at the same time, it is beautiful, sad, and moving. It is a classic, and a shame this is the last Nirvana record. Shortly after the release of the record in 1994, Kurt Cobain killed himself. So, Yeah, this is the last we got from Nirvana, unfortunately, but a fantastic record and a classic for a reason. At number two, I have one of the best albums of the 90s and another masterpiece that was produced by Butch Vig, and that is Smashing Pumpkins and their second studio album, Siamese Dream. It is their second entry on my list following Gish in 1991. This album is an improvement over Gish in every way. The production is better, the songs are masterfully crafted and performed. You can definitely hear that Billy was influenced by Loveless and shoegaze at the time. The distortion on this one is through the roof. I just love how this album sounds, especially the guitars, obviously. One of the most consistent records of all time, not a single dud. Yes, it is a long album, I think it's an hour-long record, but it doesn't feel like it. The album kicks off with one of the best openers in Cherub Rock that overwhelms you with those insane heavy guitars. And when I first heard that song, I was like, Jesus Christ, how many guitars are layered in that intro? An iconic intro and an iconic riff. And interesting fact, I saw an interview with Billy where he mentions that he actually borrowed some part of that intro from a Rush song called Baitor and the Snow Dog, which actually is true. It really sounds similar. And yeah, they were influenced by Rush, uh, apart from Black Sabbath and some other bands, but you can definitely hear that in their songs. Um, Jimmy Chamberlain, as always, is a beast on drums. He's one of the most underrated drummers in my opinion. He's so good. The record is also very varied. There are heavy songs, there are mellow songs, there's combination of both. There are even string arrangements and strings, like on Disarm, for example. It is a stacked album, bunch of classics like I already mentioned, Cherub Rock, Today, Disarm, Mayonnaise, Geek USA, and some underrated gems like Silverfuck or Hummer or Spaceboy. I just love this album. It is a perfect record from start to finish, and it's my number two, even though it was my number one for a very long time. And at number one, I have an album that none of you would have guessed is my number one. Hell, even I wouldn't have guessed this will be my number one heading into 1993. But in preparation for this video, when I listened all of these records and many more, I listened to this record and I was like, yeah, it has to be my number one. I have so many great memories listening to this record as a teenager, and even today, I think it still holds up perfectly. And that is Typo Negative, Bloody Kisses. Amazing record from start to finish. I just love every single second of it. And there are two versions of this record. The original one that contains interludes and two trashier, punkier tracks that overall don't fit the overall aesthetic of this record, and a newer version that was released shortly after the original release of the record that has a song called Suspended in Dusk, which fits to the overall aesthetic of this record, and that's the version I'm reviewing, and that's the version I prefer. And I agree with Peter Steele, who wasn't pleased with the original release, and hence we got the second one that he thought was the proper version of this record. And I agree with him because those two songs, they're great on their own, but they kind of ruin the overall atmosphere, the vibe, the aesthetics that this album has. The flow is great on this version. It feels more natural. It's melancholic, sensual record that encapsulates that gothic aesthetics perfectly. Peter's vampiric, sexual vocals paired with that unique bass sound makes this album one of the best gothic metal albums of all time. There are two classic tracks here, fan favorites Christian Woman and Black Number One, but also some great deep cuts. And there's also a cover of Summer Breeze that sounds like 100 times better than the original. I do not like the original track that much, but I think the cover version by Typo Negative is much, much better. This album is a departure from their previous abrasive sound, and this is where they started to sound good to me, and where they created that unique gothic sound that they will push till the end, basically. The riffs are massive, do metal sound to them, and add to that a bunch of memorable hooks and melodies and catchy choruses, and you have this gorgeous gothic masterpiece. Obviously, Peter Steele's baritone voice is another highlight for me. Without it, it just doesn't work. And unfortunately, the band was no more after his death in 2010, which is a shame because they had so many great records in the 90s and in 2000s, but they it all kind of started for them with Bloody Kiss It, which was their breakthrough record in a way. uh, Especially Christian Moon Black Number One propelled them into a more mainstream audience for a good reason. Peter knew how to write great catchy melodies, and this album was just the beginning. So it is a fantastic record. And yeah, that will be my number one for 1993. Please share down in the comments down below your list if you have one. What are your favorite records from 1993? Yeah, it is a stacked year. It was really hard to make this list, but I had a blast as always doing these kind of videos, and we'll continue on with 1994. So please like, share, subscribe. It means a lot to me. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one, which will be 1994.